From the island's largest cemetery, Westbury, I'm Sherwood McCaskey, welcoming you to program number 10 in the current series of
Today is a funny night.
Thanks for your time. In our last program, Anderson Alleyne retold the circumstances that led to the shooting death of his uncle and the undignified burial right here in Westbury Cemetery in July of 1937. In this week's program, Anderson will call attention to coming face to face with the man who took his uncle's life and the shame which was carried by the relatives of those individuals who were involved in the riot. We pick up the discussion exactly 39 years after his uncle was shot.
I was taking a bus to go to work. I was working in the National Insurance Building at the time, 1976. And the Government Savings Bank, because I started work with the Government Savings Bank and then National Bank until I retired. And I was in the bus sitting beside this man, big man. And another gentleman got in the bus. I don't want to call names because, if I'm not permitted to, I wouldn't. But he said, "Young Neddy," because that was my dad's nickname. "Young Neddy, you sitting beside that man? Well, he's the man that shoot your uncle." And the man looked around at me and told me, "You was clearing, son?" I said, "Yeah." And the man just looked at me, "Oh, God, forgive me now. Forgive me. Don't let me carry this with me. Forgive me." I tell you, I did like that. And because he had, bandages on his feet and stuff. I said I wouldn't do anything.
Quite an experience indeed. All type of emotions flowed. No doubt Anderson had forgiven him, but exactly how did he feel about coming into contact with the man who took his uncle's life?
I felt more comfortable, man. I stood up and let him sit. Because, bus had a bit of a crunch. I remember that morning that my aunt also got on the bus. And she looked and she saw him, which was my mother's older sister. She saw the gentleman in the back. She was a very Christian woman, very, very Christian woman. But she nudged me. And she told me, "Come in front of her." Because I had a bit of a quick temper. I knew I wasn't going to do anything though. Then you come in front of me. "How man is the man that killed your uncle?" Right there behind me. So those were two people in the bus. The first time I seen the guy's face.
If that were not enough for the poor gentleman, as fate would have it, Anderson Alleyne would come into contact with him very soon after that first incident.
My father was at the hospital at the time. He wasn't well. So I took time during the lunchtime to visit my dad. And there was the guy at the hospital. So I don't know if he felt that I was following him. And he started to bawl down the hospital when he saw me coming. I had a gang over, he started calling his name. I said, "I ain't come to do anything. My father in the hospital right now." So I think, man, I kind of pat him on his leg fairly hard though. "I ain't come to do anything, man." And I went along. So that was some concreting the statements I would have been hearing over the time. He subsequently died, but that was a bit of a discomfort. That was tangible proof in my mind that there was the guy. He's apologetic of what happened. All the stories I was hearing got to be true.
Now, this reinforces the importance of oral history and going a step further and recording that for the present and, of course, for posterity. Now, as it relates to oral tradition and speaking about the 1937 riots or revolution, as you might wish to refer to it, there is an interesting tale of how the matter was treated in earlier days.
Tom Adams used to be over here. He and my father had clashes. Serious. Serious, honestly. My father was older than him, and looked very, very, very similar. Very similar. Also at Earl Bar used to be by some friends over there. As a little boy, I could go over in Fifth Avenue Park Road and meet these men, sit down in a little small yard. I hear this chatting. And there were two gentlemen who used to broach that subject each time about the rent, especially when my mother was around. Right? And it was little, sometimes you could sense cause my mother would tag me along, at least get me some exposure with these political stalwarts. But sometimes you would see a dumbing down on the subject matter, right? Maybe take a drink, man, and that kind of thing. So sometimes change the line of discussion. I could tell you one time there was a political meeting in the back, the next avenue, and the same Eric Seeley was up there, and my father and my mother. My mom left, but my father kind of sensed my mother's difficulty and discomfort and stuff. And it was one holy mess up there. Mr. Adams came here the next 2 days, and was with an house at the time. Talked to my mother. My mother said, I've been coming to you for help, because that would have been Grantley Adams' time. I might even tell you that Grantley Adams had relatives living in the same avenue, behind here. I know them well. I spoke to one of them who lives in Oregon just a few days ago. He's much younger, obviously, but he knew the blood connection of the family. He used to be at Terracott as a young guy growing up. So people used to bring it up. Clearing want help. Brother Lowe want help. That was my uncle's name.
But the matter continued to be downplayed by Barbadians who felt a sense of shame and guilt whenever the subject was brought up. Now, you would recall in a previous program, Anderson spoke about his striking resemblance to his deceased uncle. Interestingly enough, this was subsequently reiterated by an individual who came from Trinidad who never knew Anderson but knew his uncle.
A gentleman came to Barbados after living in Trinidad from 1941, and when the man saw me on that main road, I was waiting for him. He says, "Hey boy," just like that, with Bajan Trini, "Hey boy, don't you ever wear white clothes again. You, I know, is Clarence son and Neddie's son. That's how your uncle used to dress before he died." And the man was lifting his suitcases going home. Right? So I then had this way of sometimes avoiding my mother. That is something that happened to me, now personally. Sometimes to ease her pain, especially when I see she in certain moods, I would just don't be around, right? Or if it's subject matter coming up too much, I'll try to get away. Let my brothers and them handle that stuff. Because they're shorter than me. My older brother's shorter than me, so she could deal with him. But my appearance sometimes would be a little bit painful. She wouldn't get angry with me, but she would not want to look at me. She would not want to look at me at all. She'd turn away. Especially, like I said, if I put on too light colored clothing, she wouldn't dig in that.
Now, Anderson was wise enough to recognize the effects this was having on his mother, and in a very loving manner, he would retreat so that his mother, who loved him so dearly, would not have to endure the pain of seeing an individual who reminded her so much of her fallen brother.
What I'm telling you now is the most damning and eventful things that I heard. And like I said, all the people in my movement concreted it and confirmed over time. Not because I went asking, But people would just see me and recognize that this is people I've never seen, well, obviously much older than me.
Now, it was while he was conducting research on another matter that Anderson thought it wise and absolutely necessary to honor his mother's wishes and have his uncle's name corrected and set the record straight, so to speak. Now, that search took him to the Archives Department and other research centers.
On doing this search, this came about through me not trying to acquire the land that he was born on, that he was living prior to his death. But there was some little clauses in there that meant that the land had to be ceded to us. So I wasn't too interested in it at all. I wasn't interested in that part. It's in the family, that's it. But there was a time when crunch time came and he had to make a decision. So I went about doing these searches, and I, knowing that my mom would have always told us that her brother's name was Hendrick, I took time out. I was injured at the time too. So I took some time out and went by the Archives Department, went by GIS, because every 26th, 25th, there had to be some kind of filming there. You would see it on the screens and stuff. And well, I could appreciate that. They couldn't just go and rush and get it for me. But I was close enough to the museum. So I went over by the museum, and I was able to get the birth certificates of my grandmother. I didn't get my grandfather's, but his name is written on the birth certificate as the informant, right? Because you had to go to, those days you had your child, you go to the church or you go to the police, and you did their registration there. And I says, I'm here, you know, is there any way I could find out some information regarding these people and show them my IDs? And the lady was able to go into the computer and pull it for me. So I wrote off the basic information. I paid her, I think it was $15. She gave me a print, and then I went to the registry and got the certificate confirming his name was Hendrick Leroy Lowe, Hendrec. The effort, it was then quickened for me to get it adjusted to the real thing. Instead of, you know, over time, people go around Leroy Lowe. Somebody studying history would continue with this Kenneth Lowe. Even if they should title it Kenneth Lowe, aka, or Hendrick Lowe, aka Kenneth Lowe.
Of course, we commend Anderson for seeking to correct the error in his uncle's name. Interestingly enough, there's so much we could learn from his quest and seeking for the truth.
But when I discovered certain elements that had some errors, I just decided I will go ahead with the land process and conjoin that with my mother's effort to get the name correct, of the name of deceased corrected, for the sake of good history, because his name was never Kenneth. He was always Hendrick, but for time immemorial, it was being displayed as Kenneth. And she felt that it wasn't fair to the future and some of the past, that remain as it was. So I just took up the baton and decided I will go and get it cleared up, or effort to get it cleared up. So that was my rationale, but I became more determined to get it done when the assistant wasn't, in my opinion, forthcoming as it should. I had acquired the documentation, and still I was told I cannot do it.
So determined was he to honor his mother's wishes, he was not daunted by the obstacles in his path, so to speak. In fact, this motivation was determined by a biblical quotation.
And my word was this, verbatim. There are some thou shalt nots in the Ten Commandments, and there are some thou shalls. Having told me what I can do, tell me what I could do. My voice was a bit loud at the time. And then I was given directive that I could get someone sign an affidavit to that effect. And they would go ahead with the correcting. But I didn't take it up that way because I was injured at the time, like I said. My neck was broken. I had pins and all that, ribs broken. I couldn't readily get up and do things. But the little I did, I went to the Ministry of Culture, was asked to write a letter, and which I did, explaining what I'm all about. And I did get a response after about a year or so that there were some searches then. It wasn't conclusive. I did not say that I could have gotten an affidavit to the effect. And that in itself is quite easy for me. The fact being that a certain attorney was born right next door to us. He's an attorney now. And should I go to him, he only got called up his brothers and sisters and confirm, because he's younger than me. But he could call up and say, hey, go ahead and do this for Andy. They could relate the story just as I think. They told grandparents, his parents and my grandparents live side by side, sharing one yard space. There wasn't a separation between houses, so we were always interconnecting. So. But I haven't done it yet. I just wanted to have this evidence. And when I saw that, the probability is that someone else could have done the check. I may be wrong, but I don't know if any effort to make the corrections was put in place. The probability is that people just felt comfortable being with it. Nobody's coming forward and trying to get it changed, so let's go. I'm sure that there were other names though that are corrected. Some of them I am very, very aware of. That they had some errors in the title, and it was corrected with great hurrah and publicity. And if there's anything that government want to do, and knowing that something was supposed to be done, much obliged. Right? But for history's sake, sometimes a title makes a difference. God knows that somebody wants to have the nature. And so one name one of my children after one of the people who get shooting, right, and chose my uncle's name and titled the child Kenneth. That is a little bit of a distortion of the facts. That's a grain salt. Primarily, get his name right. Promote it, advertise it, do the relative corrections, or appendicize it, so that it will reflect the true title. That's immediate. See? And I'm looking for nothing big. Personally, me, I went too close to death to want stuff. But things like getting it right, correcting. I worked at a place where one of the CEOs used to say, get it right first time, and you waste less time. You only spend time. No, you just you spend time, you don't waste it. So that's and this is really satisfying my mother that I saw pained for years. My mother, her uncle to her cousin to a lesser extent, and my grandfather. My grandfather died when I was still at school, so I wouldn't have seen much of his anger, but I know it was there, right? He died when I was about 16. So sometimes you gotta go in a burning to put things in the true space. I don't know. I heard one time, as a gentleman lived in a couple of houses up here. He used to always tell me to owe you guys money. I can't even conceptualize that. I cannot. Because they know that people were, I don't know if the term is reparations now, but at least there were remunerations for people. My mother said she never saw such. So, but the now, if there is a now, it would be correcting the script.
Now, there was a misunderstanding that Anderson's uncle was one of the rioters in Bridgetown on that morning, but thankfully this was subsequently corrected through an eyewitness account.
With some efforts through the police, that was somewhat settled. I don't know how deeply it was publicized, but I know it faded with time. It faded with time, and then the documentaries, people who were in the immediate area, I saw the documentary a couple of years ago where this lady said she was one of the Huskers in the immediate area and behind Plantation Limited building, and she saw when the man dropped down, bam, the guy got shot. Some other person said that they were by what people used to call the Mutual Building in town, former Barclays, and they were able to see what's going down. What went down. But that part of he being demonized as a thing, and I use that word demonized with caution, because history would tell you that these people were fighting for the rights, man. When Barbados was free of slavery, America had it 1865. So we were kind of progressive thinkers. We had 30-something years on them in that aspect. When we had voting rights, they were way behind. Guys started fighting thing all around Alabama and stuff when we had already fought in 1937. So those things would impress upon my mind and my mom's mind too. My mom used to prioritize voting, right? You just vote, even if you vote for an independent. Little things like that would tell you that these folks of the day, that had more reasoning than wealth. At least you had a sense of self-responsibility. Even if it was responsibility, stayed and not your immediates.
Unfortunately, the entire matter was downplayed. Anderson recognized the effects this was having on his family and other families all across Barbados. There was an associated guilt and shame to all of this.
This might surprise people at some time, It wasn't something that we internalized, but for the protection of the household, you kind of don't bring it up. Others had a more devastating effect. As I would have told you, a man was beaten to the ground. People will use the word pilloried, but beaten to the ground in some instances, physically. His name was Trash. Had all kind of nicknames for him, because in order to make them look good, you had to make him look bad. And I know the family of a particular person who would not be too deeply involved in discussion of such. That's how bad it had on them. They might fight in a very underground manner, for want of a better word. not too bold and upfront. But, you know, they always say if you know boxing and you see a karate man coming at you, stick to your boxing, you might win.
In 2019, Anderson Alleyne visited the office here at Westbury Cemetery and requested that the superintendent show him his uncle's final resting place. After that walk down the pathway, the superintendent brought him to this gravesite. It was his first visit. Thanks for your time. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. This has been
Today is a funny night.